I'm really excited to introduce you to our speakers. So first up, we have Helen Sanchez, who is the founder of Tanagui Career Consultants. I have been blessed enough to work with Helen a lot, actually, over the last year and a half. She is absolutely amazing and a huge wealth of information. Her background includes over 20 years working in recruiting education in women and gender studies, as well as African American studies. She's the founder of, like we said, Tanagui Career Consultants, whose primary focus is to offer services that result in breakthrough resumes and interview mastery for women over 40. Helen is going to be joined in conversation with Katie Mason. Katie is best known for encouraging and inspiring virtual beyond the surface level participatory sessions, attracting repeat attendees seeking to practice collaboration. Her childhood in Hong Kong sparked her love and appreciation for different cultures and different perspectives. And along the way, her training in design and research strengthened her superpower in uncovering patterns, themes, and threads in human stories. I am really excited to listen in on this conversation. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Katie, and Helen. Take it away.
Hello, hey everyone. It's really amazing to be here with Helen. And I know recently, Helen, you did a talk in overcoming ageism in the job search, and now we're into ageism in hybrid and remote work environment for today's talk. We would love to hear from you, your self-introduction and your venture, Tanagui Career Consultants. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Katie, and thank you, Meg. As Meg mentioned, a little expansion on that, I'm a certified career coach with over 35 years of experience in staffing and recruiting. I work one-on-one with women over 40 in identifying their career goals and helping them to reach those goals. I am based in New Jersey, and I've worked with women all over the country. And as someone who has personally experienced ageism in the workplace, I also have done some research during my women and gender studies on age discrimination impact on women in the workplace. So between those two experiences and the research, I decided that was my passion, to work with women over 40, to help them with their careers and help them to reach the goals that they have in mind. So that's basically what I've been doing.
Amazing. Now I would love to hear about your thoughts on how ageism affects the future and aspiration of women above 40.
Well, I think that as a basic, women over 40 can experience intersectional discriminations, whether it includes ageism, sexism, racism. Women are the recipients of all of it or some of it. Often. The Age Discrimination Act and Employment Act identifies age discrimination as beginning at 40 based on the research and studies done to develop that act. So that's where the 40 came from. But women are often impacted by ageism, of course, at a higher rate than men. Surprise, surprise. When I was doing research, one of the quotes that really was what I think just prompted me completely was when I read that men age like fine wine and women just age. And it was like, no. So that was my spur to go on. But women do often feel the impacts of ageism at a younger age than men, and more frequently than men. They have, older women have a higher unemployment rate than older men, and they experience more employment rejections usually than men. So I think those are the impacts of ageism and the effects of ageism now, and as we stand now in the future. One would hope that would change, but I think it will take a lot of work. And unfortunately, ageism is not something that's an ism that's really referenced or taught in diversity and inclusion training, which it should be. And one of my goals is to work on maybe having an impact on that, where companies will recognize that needs to be addressed and needs to be trained, because you have obviously a lot of young managers. I just read an article recently about the advertising industry, and the average age of a manager is 38. and the average age across the board is 28. And despite there being many, many, many brilliant young people and young people who have so much to contribute, they don't have that experience that the older worker does. So when you're sitting in a meeting, there have been studies that have shown cross-generational teams have more productivity, more success, and there's so much value to the cross-generational teams, because where the younger manager has the input, the current day, and the understanding of technology today, and of his coworkers and his peers. The older person brings the experience of having been there and done that a lot of times. Just the input, for example, in advertising, a lot of the advertising that represents older people, older Americans, is considered offensive. So were you to have a cross-generational team rather than just a young team, you would have the input that says, we need to consider all these audiences, and we need to be more sensitive to it to support our clients. So there's so much value in it that I would hope that in the future, the effect would be diminished somewhat and the value would be understood. So that's something we need to work toward. But as it stands today, and as it exists, and as it perceives to be in the future, there's a lot of impact on women over 40 in the workplace in age discrimination.
I completely understand everything that you shared. I feel like they are a bridge between all the different ages and gives their perspective and adds value too. So thank you so much for the insight there. Now for the employers, what are their underlying concerns about hiring 40+ workers?
Well, I think obviously one of the primary concerns is the cost. They always feel that the older employee is going to cost more, and that they need to look at their budgets. And part of the problem with that thought pattern is that they really don't give the value that comes with that higher cost. So that's, again, something that we need to emphasize, the value that comes with that experience. Some of the other incorrect concepts are that older people are less adaptive, that they are set in their ways, that they're not flexible and won't change. Again, we all know that that's incorrect, that they're less innovative, that especially in the technical skills, some young managers will perceive that if they're interviewing someone who's older, they can't even work their cell phone, which again is just a flawed philosophy and mindset that we need to demonstrate is incorrect. But those are primarily, I think, what employers are concerned about: the cost, the flexibility, whether they're slower, whether they're slowing down, depending again on the age. But it's just all perception. And I think you have to look at two employers. There are employers who embrace mature employees and experience and ageism. There are employers who have what they call returnship programs, which bring people back who had employment gaps, who may have been out of the workplace for 10, 15 years, and they have programs to bring them back. So when you do your research and you look at those employers, you understand that those employers embrace that experience and that maturity. And so those are employers where you might search for jobs and see what they have open.
Yeah, beyond that, what more can the employers do? What would your suggestion be for the employers to really expand themselves and be more inclusive towards the 40+ applicants to end the age discrimination?
Well, again, for the employers, I think that it's important for them to include ageism in their diversity and inclusion training, and for them to be educating themselves on the value of those cross-generational teams, on the numbers of the percentages of successes, and on the performance that exceeds teams that aren't blended, on the mentorship possibilities between the mature employee and the younger employee. So I think employers need to be either educated on that or made aware of it during an interview, that these are the realities. This is not something that as a 40+ person that we just created. It's the reality that statistics show that these cross-generational teams are more successful, that there's more value, that not only is it more successful and more productive as a team, but again, in meeting your clients' needs, it improves your ability to do that. So I think those are what the employers need to look at.
Mm-hmm. Now, switching over to thinking about what often a 40+-year-old may encounters the employment gap, like you mentioned, the returnership program. What does Tanagui do specifically to make it easier for women above age 40 to return to the workforce after employment gap, for example?
I think that one of the biggest drawbacks is a lack of confidence in women who really don't grasp and don't fully emphasize what the value is that they bring to the table often. So what we do is sit down and chat. And one thing that I ask them to do initially is to get a blank piece of paper and sit down. And during that gap, what was it that they did? Whether they were caregivers, whether they were parental leaves, whatever it was, you had experiences, whether they were volunteer, whether they were in schools, whether it was managing an estate in a caregiver situation, whatever the gap included, there's skill involved with that. And some of those skills are what we call transferable skills. So they need to sit down and write what they did and exactly what they did during that period of time, during that gap. Did they organize events for school? Again, did they do estate planning? Did they handle medical billing? Whatever they did, again, there's a lot of transferable skill, whether it's customer service, whether it's managing a team of moms doing a project, and those things need to be emphasized. So the first thing is identifying the skills, and then also talking to them about doing the research, again, on companies that obviously do embrace and understand the importance of a mature employee and of the people who are coming back despite being out of the workplace with skills that are so valuable and so important. So we need to look at all of that, and then a gap needs to be identified on their resume. You can't ignore a gap, especially if it's a long gap. But it's really important how you present it and what you've done during that period of time. Again, you may have done some volunteer work. That's very valuable. All of that work is valuable, gave you skills, gave you experiences that will enhance whatever your experience was prior to the gap. So all of that just needs to be presented. One of the things that's really critical is how someone coming back into the workplace, or someone over 40 who may have been in a job for 10 or 15 or 20 years and now is looking for a new job. It's very important how they present themselves, both on paper, in their resume, in their application, in their physical appearance. Unfortunately, as I often say to women, not to put the burden on them, but the burden is on them, that they need to evaluate. I've suggested sometimes they video themselves on their phone and look at how you're presenting yourself, so that you can analyze yourself and maybe make improvements. Or maybe you're just fine as is. You can do that with friends and get their input and ask friends, what do they consider your strengths? What do they consider your drawbacks? And sometimes you'll get insight that you didn't realize. A friend may say, this is what I consider your strength, that you didn't even think about as one of your strengths. So all of that information is very valuable, and it takes a lot of research and a lot of work to find a job today. And unfortunately, there's a lot of tools that are available online, so that makes it a little easier, but it still takes a lot of time and a lot of research.
Do you feel like the remote opportunity has increased and that has helped with the job search?
I think the remote opportunities have definitely increased. I actually managed a virtual team for 13 years before I started Tanagui. So for me, it was old hat. And when it was interesting listening to the comments when the pandemic started, and then so much of it went virtual. But I honestly can't say that I think that it's made a difference in the playing field of ageism, because whether you're doing it on Zoom or whether you're doing it in person, from the moment that you are on the screen or in the door, you're being evaluated and you're being analyzed and judged. And so even on the screen, again, you need to look at how you're presenting yourself. Unfortunately, what you're wearing, your energy level, how you sit in a chair, all of that is something that with the wrong person, as I mentioned to Arusha earlier from PowerToFly, in my last job, there was a situation that evolved that my boss's boss, who was the vice president, who had made a commitment to me for a promotion, was able to learn that I'd been married 47 years. And so from that, he evaluated that I was older than he thought and said to me, you were married longer than I was born. So after that, I knew what was going to happen, and it did. That job disappeared. And, that's the thing. You can't, it wasn't something that he evaluated looking at me or meeting me in person, which he had done before. It was something that he evaluated after he was able to find this information out. So if you can present yourself with a high energy level and evaluating how you're carrying yourself and how you're presenting yourself, that's one of the keys is to always be evaluating yourself and always be presenting yourself as it's a mindset. Some of it, it's a confidence level. If you feel your value, if you understand how important the work you can do is, that transposes to the person you're talking to. So all of that's important, all of that. But I don't think that remote has really leveled the playing field at all.
We do have a question come through in regards to how do we establish our value and adaptability in the job application. Can you tell us a bit more?
Well, again, that's part of the time consumption and research. You need to read the job description that you're applying for, and you need to be sure that those transferable skills are there represented so that you're going to get through the applicant tracking system. Another thing in presenting your value is being very specific. So for example, if you can't say I managed a customer service team, but I managed a customer service team that improved customer service satisfaction by 20% or 50% or whatever. So there needs to be something specific in the achievement that's quantifiable and measurable. And that is what really presents you as being someone that's going to bring the value and going to have the experience. But it's also very important today with the applicant tracking systems and the keyword searches that you look at you need to start with a fundamental resume that you create, a template, and then you need to look at the job description that you are applying to, and you might have to tweak here or there. You might have to emphasize something more in one than the other, and not to misrepresent anything, but there's going to be more value depending on the job that you're applying to. So you might have to tweak words here and there before you send your resume in, which is one of the reasons that I don't think there's a lot of benefit to having one resume loaded in a system. Sometimes in applications you have to, but you've already applied for the job. But if, for example, in a LinkedIn, when you put one resume, if someone's searching LinkedIn and looks for you, they're only going to get that one resume that might not really just click with their job description. So I think putting your skills and your experience and in your profile is more important.
Now, yeah, more about the resume. If, because someone has like an experience from over 10 years ago, so then, or they have the year of graduation, should they kind of leave that out so that it doesn't show that their age?
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Well, the resume, that's the first key, is that your resume needs to be represented the way they exist today. And that just has changed a lot from when I used to write my resume, because today fonts, you should be at a 10 to 12. Some of this is from recruiters who who speak their preference, and some of it is from studies of hiring managers and what they evaluate. So a 10 to 12 font, usually something simple like Calibri or Times New Roman. You shouldn't have, unless you're creative and need to represent that creativity on your resume, it should really be a classic format, because applicant tracking systems struggle with columns and boxes and things like that. So you really shouldn't do that. You should have your name, your cell phone, your email, your LinkedIn URL, your city, not a street address, unless you date yourself by doing that. People don't anymore, partially because it's online and not necessary. You should have a summary, no objectives. If you have the word objective, they immediately will date you. So some professional summary or summary of what you're bringing to the table and what you want to do with that. You should go back 10 to 15 years on your resume. You should try not to go beyond 10 to 15 years. If you've had a job for 20 or 25 years, then you need to be a little more strategic, but 10 to 15 years is ideal. Your resume should not exceed 2 pages. 1 page is okay if you have less experience, but definitely 2 pages are, recruiters are very comfortable with 2 pages. That's actually their preference usually, because it's not as condensed. There should be no education dates. You should make sure you have soft skills. Soft skills are big today. You should have, again, concrete metrics. So if you did the, 50% increase in customer service sat, or save 20% in the budget for advertising, whatever it was. I had a client who just got a job of her dreams, partly because, and she's the oldest, and she's in her 40s, oldest person in the nonprofit, because she had print media experience, and no one amongst the young people in the nonprofit had it. So this is what she brings, and this is what I meant when I talked about, again, advertising. There's a lot of value to the experience and the maturity. So you just need to make sure that you're aware of that. You need to research a company before you're talking to them and understand what their mission is, what their goals are, what the projects they are working on, so that how do you apply to that? How do you bring value to them for whatever they're working on? So again, if you go beyond 10 or 15 years, you can put professional achievements or additional professional experience. You can list companies. I have another client who was IBM prior to that. So to put that on, you can headline it that way, and then put the company or a brief summary, but no dates on that, no dates at all. So your dates, your 10 to 15 years, you can put your dates in your progression, but no dates on education, no dates beyond that.
Yeah. So someone also wanted to ask about your thoughts on a personal illness that where you had to have a leave of absence. How do you address that?
Well, depending again on how long it was for, it would be a gap. And again, they should always be represented, but you don't have to provide personal details. You can say medical leave, or medical gap, or caregiver, or whatever it was. And then it's something you can discuss if you're comfortable with it and you feel they're comfortable with it in your interview. But on the resume, you should not give all the, it's not necessary to give all the details.
And we're almost wrapping up, but we have a few more questions. What do you think of the functional and chronological resumes?
I think functional are good, again, if you are in the same job for 20, 25 years. But I think chronological is the best choice if you can do that. So that's, yeah, a functional are useful for, again, the possibility of wanting to just show a picture of what you've done and what you've achieved, and avoid all the dates. So, yeah.
Yeah, and definitely reach out to Helen so you can get more information afterwards. The other ones are more along the lines of, okay, does Tanagui have close relationships with employers who love to work with mature applicants? And also, are there certain industries or verticals that are more welcoming and less ageist?
Ageism exists across every industry, but there are some that honestly, technology and again, advertising, where they're on the younger side, and some where finance and medical, where they appreciate a little bit more the maturity and the experience. So yes, I think that you can look at those, but it depends on your background and how you want to apply it. Really, that's important. One thing I would add that is so critical from my perspective in the job search is networking. We didn't touch on that at all, but that is so critical, and people sometimes are very reluctant. It's just critical today. So you need to make a list of your friends, your family, your professional associations, your alumni associations, professional organizations, and use that in your networking. So that to me is critical. And LinkedIn is so key for that. That provides so much ability to research. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you have a question. Also, if you go to tanagui.com, you can make an appointment with me for a 15-minute chat if we missed a question. So yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. I think we have to wind it down for the next talk to come up. So definitely reach out to Helen. Feel free to connect with me. I would love it if you be able to stop into modernchi.org. And then for Tanagui, it's tanagui.com. Also, I love that you brought up the networking aspect, because now we can also do remote networking, which is then a good way to practice presenting ourselves. So that's amazing too. Thank you so much for that.
Yes,
Okay.
and there's a lot of opportunity in that. Yes.
Yeah. Any last thoughts before we close out?
No, I think again, the networking is over 60% of jobs are found through networking. So that's how important it is. And that actually percentage increases with age also. So that's just key. That's always the thing I like to make sure I get in there. But yes, I enjoyed have all of your questions. I appreciate all of your time, and thank you and thank Meg. So yes, that's it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And we will leave a buffer for the next talk. And thank you so much and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you both. That was absolutely wonderful. I love listening to Helen talk about these things. It's she's honestly one of my favorite guests. So thank you, Helen, for joining us today.
Thank you, Meg. I enjoy spending time with you.
Yes.